our inventory sits inside the brains of our people. Our next big idea, it needs to be unlocked from a creative place. And so creating a space that people are proud to come to, that allows creativity and open-mindedness and just like those random collisions of thought to bounce off of each other in a space that evokes creativity. The humblest of the beginnings really go back to the co-founder, Jarrett Taylor, who was, this goes back to like 2001. And what he was doing was he was solving a problem inside, a printing problem inside Novell Networks. It was very niche, and Novell was starting to crash. So we came up with some ways to evolve. And when I say we, because I was actually doing quite a bit of consulting with him. I had an independent company. He had a lifestyle business, but that's how we kind of got to know each other, was through that consulting work. From 2002 to about 2006, I spent a lot of time going around the world to tech conferences that were Novell focused. Eventually, in about 2006, we created a tool that would migrate from Novell print servers to Microsoft print servers. We saw that migration being something we could take advantage of. But still, we didn't really grow the company. It was an idea that definitely was an awesome lifestyle business, but we didn't see it as like a long-term thing. 2006, I decided that I wanted to kind of go out and see how to scale companies more. I had all of my companies that I was consulting for were like 50 people max. And in particular, working with Jarrett, I realized I loved the technology industry. I just loved the people. I loved the technologists. I loved the humility that they brought to the table. And I wanted to learn more about the technologies, about how to sell the technology. Working with Jarrett and his customer base, that was just where I found my people. Like, that's where they were. Everything was good, but I could just feel that I was limited. I just didn't feel like I had that broad exposure to how to, visualize a building like this. Like, how could you visualize a building like this if you're just going from, strip mall to strip mall where businesses are pocketed at 20 and 30 people a piece? And I was always writing, like, I want to be world-class. I want to be able to create world-class businesses. And so I felt like I had a conversation with Jarrett and said, I want to go up north. I want to take my career to the next level. He was totally awesome about it. And going from Printer Properties Pro, converting to PrinterLogic, and now moving into this new rebrand that'll take us into additional products. So when I was finishing up at BYU, and that's where I built that business plan, was with John Richards in his class. And I discovered, and as I kind of mulled over, should I launch this business plan or not, I ended up just saying, let me just see if I can get into Cisco. So I go to the Business Recruitment Center at BYU, and I say, who do we know at Cisco? And they introduced me to a guy named Matt Riley, who introduced me to a guy named Garrett Helmer, guys that eventually would come back and work and be a really important part of the PrinterLogic story. Right. But they were working at Cisco at the time. They kind of helped shepherd me in. They didn't have any sales account executive positions. So somehow I finagled my way in as a system engineer and got into that program and had a slew of people, you talk about mentors, that helped this guy that didn't know what a router and a switch was get all the way through a program where you had to, like, it was intense. It was awesome. But that was a really important part of my personal story, because that's where I converted from just being really strictly on the business side to, for 4 years, I was a dedicated deep data center engineer for some of the largest companies in the world. And that's where kind of like everything started to change for me, where I started to say, yeah, I've got this business side, but now I understand the technical side. In fact, Garrett was one of my mentors, who now is our chief marketing officer. At the time, I told him, I said, Garrett, I think I'm gonna go get my CCIE. I'd had all the certs up to CCIE. I said, I'm gonna go get my CCIE. And he knew me pretty well by then, because I would have like a quarterly call with him. And he said, hey, Ry, like I get it. I see what you're saying you want to do, but you have this business side to you. Like, have you considered anything else? And that's where I went home and really had to contemplate, like, am I really going to go down this engineer path? Is that my most natural abilities, or do they live there? Or am I kind of like forcing something where I should explore the business side? And ultimately ended up making the decision to go get my MBA. And that's when I was living in Washington, D.C. So I went to George Washington University for that. And at the end of that is when I called up my old buddy, Jarrett Taylor, and I said, hey, just for old time's sake, I'm into my electives. If you want, I could create like an independent study. If you want me to put a marketing plan or a business plan together or something for you. And he said, yeah, actually. And that's when he described, I've gone way beyond the little niche product. I've just created this thing that eliminates the need for print servers altogether. And so like, I think it's a huge market and I'd love to, and so we start putting that business plan together. He starts saying, well, you need to come back to Utah. Let's do this, let's do this. I was like, yeah, Jarrett, you can't put a software company together in Southern Utah. Like I had seen those networks and what was required of like being able to make phone calls and have people just kind of jump ship for the newest, most exciting opportunity. And I don't think that's gonna happen, but you know, he's a pretty persuasive guy. And the thing that persuaded me the most was I took it to, AstraZeneca was one of my customers at the time. And I took it to their group and I said, listen, like I don't know much about printers, but as I get into this, it feels like an infrastructure play. It feels like we're actually taking servers out of your data center. Check this out, have a demo with this Jarrett guy. And they did, and they came back. They're like, not only would that be awesome, we got to upgrade all of our 350 print servers, and we don't even know how we're going to transfer and like the end users from one experience to the other, and his tool just automatically migrates them over to the new thing. So they were really excited about it. And when that happened, that's when I had a mind shift of saying, well, Jarrett, I can't help you put a business together for printer related stuff because I don't know anything about it. And it shifted over to, no, everybody's trying to rip infrastructure out of the remote locations and get everything back, at least to a private cloud and eventually to a public cloud. And the print server is just one gnarly thing that is very difficult to do without the technology that we developed. I remember us coming up with the idea, hey, let's migrate people from Novell print servers to Microsoft print servers and make it as easy as possible. And that was called the printer migrator. And that's it. That's as far as we had gone. He had that epiphany and that idea. I remember we were on the bus on the way to Tech Ed in Boston. I remember him having the epiphany of what if we could get rid of print servers altogether? I mean, he was the kind of the crazy genius, the idea guy. And at that point I hadn't been an engineer, so I was like, okay, that sounds cool. By the time we had arrived together in 2012, at the end of my MBA, creating this business plan, I was a very serious engineer. And I had a very serious audience with very serious dollars. And so when I was able to present to them what he was doing, to see their reaction and to understand that this wasn't just it wasn't just a little niche thing. Like this was something that every enterprise could benefit from. Coming to St. George to build a technology company was definitely a concern that I had. But what I found when I got here was we could sell the lifestyle, even to people that were in California or up north, because a lot of people were starting to look like me, like they were 22 and living in an apartment with other people, making ends meet, you know, having the scene, the nightlife and all that was important, but now maybe they're 30, maybe they're 35. And all of a sudden being able to buy a house and maybe have some kids and these kinds of things were mattering to my generation of technologists. And so when we started to hit that point where we wanted to recruit, like I would never straight up say, hey, come join my company. What I would do is I would find people that I knew were really smart and I'd get engaged with consulting engagements. And I'd say, hey, like, you know, I've got this project. I know you've got a job and you'd never consider us. We're too small. But I'd love to just kind of like work with you and get you know, a deliverable of some sort on this project. And what I found was those projects allowed those, if they were consultants with half an entrepreneurial bug in them at all, like as they did their project, they started to fall in love with the company, and we would be able to kind of recruit that executive class slowly but surely. And then there was this other really awesome group of people that were they were here because they wanted to be here, but they were underemployed in a lot of ways. And so I think of a couple of my executives right off the top of my head who, they were St. George people, and they could have gone and done anything anywhere in the world, but they just had made a lifestyle decision and say, no, I want to be in St. George, I'm going to be in St. George. So we were able to find some of those. And then there were these other group of people that really, especially within the last 5 years, we've started to see come on stronger. And then with COVID, it's getting really strong. Is that group of people that say, my employer let me work wherever I want. And I've done that for 2 years. And I absolutely need an office to get back into. I need people. I need to engage with people. I need that office life again. Because being in my home office on WebEx all day long or Zoom all day long or GoToMeeting, whatever, like, it's not working for me anymore. And so we were able to recruit some really great talent from outside. And then I think the most important thing, like the most important part of our story was just finding the raw, smart, gritty kind of like mentality that you have out of St. George, and being willing to put a little elbow grease into training them, like explaining to them. I mean, that's what Cisco did for me. They drug me off the street and taught me how to be a system engineer. So I had empathy for both the process and an appreciation for what they did for me. And I was like, well, we can recreate that if we invest some time and energy into like putting really good training together. So those are kind of like the 4 different ways that we were able to recruit. But I remember it was probably 4 years ago now, running out of space. Like there just weren't buildings that could hold us. So Jared and I went on a little journey looking for space, and we're looking at different locations and refurb jobs. And finally we got to the old Dixie ACT building off the other side by the Tonnequin Data Center. And we were with Matt Liu. He was the economic development guy at the time, and kind of the city owned the building. And we walked through it, and I think in Jared's mind, he's a really hardcore engineer. So he's like, oh man, I could put 15,000 people in this building if I, and he kind of like had it all figured out. So he's like, this is great. And I was just like, man, like this is not, like I didn't come here to build another strip mall behind a mountain cliff thing. And I said, Matt, what are you guys doing with the old airport? You haven't done anything with it. And I said, Matt, if I get an executive in this room and I have them look off this bluff, I was like, there's not an executive in the world that I could say, why would you want this lifestyle? The reason why people are having a tough time recruiting here is either their business sucks or they're really bad salespeople. Because St. George is an amazing place to live. And he was like, wow, like we've actually talked about it being a tech center, bringing Jared up here and convincing him that building was going to be awesome and that this whole thing would work. And eventually, I think he kind of caught the vision. We brought on, the city got us, there were a bunch of entrepreneurs that showed up, and they were going to build 10 buildings and stuff them with thousands of people. And then all of a sudden checks needed to be written, and there were like really 2 people standing around saying, let's keep going. Like Isaac was one of them with Busy. And then Clint showed up. He wanted to be a part of this, and he caught the vision of what this kind of space could do in terms of like recruiting. I mean, to me, it was this other thing is like, we've got these 4 values that are really important to us, but like, to actually create like physical manifestations of those value systems and build those into the building. So people say, no, like they really mean things. I mean, you go down into that stage area and you see, like we say we're storytellers, and that means something. There's a book behind that, building a story brand. Actually having a place to do storytelling. We have a full studio where we do either whether it's Camtasia, Chalk Talk, or interview style, full video recording studio. Like, well, why do we have that? Well, because we're storytellers. And you go through all of the value systems that we have, like this building has all of those things built into it to say, yeah, like we really believe in this stuff. And so that's why you build a building like this. Like, how else are we going to unlock? How else are we going to get that inventory out of the minds of the people that we employ? I've already seen what happens when somebody's sat in an office, a home office, for 2 years. They come running into my arms, and they've been well trained, and they're just desperate to be back with colleagues and friends. So please keep that mindset. Like, just keep them locked up in their home offices, because it will unleash an incredible amount of talent for the people willing to continue to invest in the human experience that actually unlocks the creativity that we're trying to unlock in the tech space. I have zero doubt about that. I'm not even concerned. It's awesome to be kind of at the forefront of having that space and having a building that you can fill up with people that are ready to get back to reality.